Hi, I'm Lark, and today I'd like to show you how I start my third worm bin. Here in Wisconsin, it is really cold, and we can't have our worm farms outside. So I worm farm in my basement in Rubbermaid Totes. Right now, I have two totes going. This is the oldest. This is the newest. I have stopped feeding in both of these. This one is filled to the top, so I want to use this worm farm for having the worms migrate up to my new worm farm. This is down about 5 inches or so, and there's tons of worms in here. Not ready to harvest castings, but enough worms to share and put into my new worm farm. So I want to show you how I work my new worm farm and have the worms migrate up. What I do is I take my Rubbermaid tote and I cut out the bottom, leaving a lip. I cut it a little smaller, about 3-4 inches smaller all the way around. So this hardware cloth that I have will fit inside and not fall through. It'll catch on the lip, and even with all the heavy food and paper, wet paper in here and the worms, it will not fall through. So I take it and I insert it into the bottom, and it's catching on the bottom. So now it's tight. I place it on top of my old worm farm, the oldest worm farm. Now I'm ready to start my new worm farm. I don't want to hand pick the worms. This way I can just go upstairs for days and the worms will come up. Kind of like the expensive worm factory where they migrate up the tower, but I just have one for them to go up. Now, what I will be putting on the bottom is some shredded newspaper, and I will slightly dampen it. And I've dampened a whole lot of junk mail and paper towel already. So this is pretty wet. So when I put it on top of my shredded newspaper, this will also get somewhat wet. I just don't want it too wet. And I don't shred it real small. If you shred it smaller, they'll probably eat it quicker. But I don't take a whole lot of time. Now this here is my wetter paper, and it will get absorbed into the newspaper. Just to save time, I didn't want to wet the newspaper and have it dripping all over. But it should be slightly damp, like a wrung out sponge, and it'll be fine. So after I add the paper, and it's damp, I will add some of my food. Now this has been sitting for about a week, maybe 5 days, the food that's in here. I have all fruits and veggies. I do have shredded newspaper and paper towel in here too, which get dampened by my coffee grounds. So the ratio of 1 to 4, 1 part green, 4 parts carbon, is pretty close enough. So there isn't a whole bucket of greens where I'll be overfeeding the worms. This is fine. I have found that this size bucket is fine for me about once a week, as long as I have enough worms in there. So I will add the coffee grounds, tea bags, eggshells. I have egg cartons, and that's all going in. And again, it's not too much green. It'll be fine. It doesn't get smelly. See, I have newspaper in here too. And can you see it's kind of drippy wet? That's from the coffee grounds probably. But that's why I didn't dampen all my newspaper on the bottom. I know that it's going to absorb this liquid that's in here.
Is there any type of food that you won't put in there?
I don't give them citrus or onions, or like I make ginger tea every morning. I don't think they'd like the ginger peelings because it's kind of spicy. But if you forget, it's no big deal. They'll eat it eventually or it'll just decompose. So I don't pick it out if it's in there. And I try to make the pieces smaller as far as the bananas and apple and that. I'll chop them, but I don't put them in my blender. It takes time to do that and wash it. So I will now also add some dry newspaper up on top. Some shredded dry newspaper on top. This helps with keeping the odor down and the fruit flies. I don't have odor or fruit flies down here. It really does not stink at all. So, add the newspaper. You can even take your bag, and if you don't have a sheet of cardboard to put on top, just put your newspaper on. Put your paper bag on top. That'll be fine. But if you have a box to put on top, 2 of them, that happens to fit my worm farms perfectly. You can see that there's no worm farm showing at all. It will be only the dry cardboard, and it will hold the odor down, keeps the worms down there. They don't try to migrate up. And I'll keep this, probably for about 5 days, and I'll check on it and see how the worms are doing. If I want to put some more worms in, I'll go to this worm bin, and there's so many worms in here, I'll just take a handful from here, and can you see this here? I just picked up 1 handful, and there's tons of worms in here, in this second tote. So I'll just take this and add them, whoops, I got cardboard on top there, just add these worms, and whatever eggs they have in here, or cocoons, and I'll just put a couple handfuls in the new worm bin. We'll share from both worm bins. There's plenty of worms and cocoons and eggs in here that if I take some out, it won't be any big deal. I'll have a 3rd worm farm going, and that's what I'm after. I'm after a lot of worm castings for spring. This year my husband wants to use worm tea on his entire lawn, so I have to get lots of castings ready for spring. So I hope you enjoyed this. It is inexpensive, and it's easy. It really is easy. Now when this tote is done, you know, when I think I have enough worms in it, I will pick it up and place it. I have another tote right here. You don't have to have a tote. You can have just a tray on the bottom. I happen to have a tote with the top of the lid cut out, and not cut out all the way because I want this tote to sit on here. And that's the way I used to do my worm farms, to catch the liquid. But the more research I do, the more I hear that you shouldn't have too wet of a worm farm, and you don't need a lot of juice down there. I'm going to make my worm tea from the castings and aerate it, not from liquid down here. If you do get liquid down here, you can use it on your plants, watered down. But I'm not after that. That kind of sometimes gets stinky. So I'm after having the perfect worm farm where it's just damp. So I hope this helps you. And please come to my website and join in on my forum, www.larksperennials.com. Bye-bye.